JJ, the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are talking about the PPP application for your loan that you got, okay? So I tell you what, on this one, you're gonna be like, I don't know if I can keep watching, but you really do need to watch till the end because it's not gonna be exciting, but you're gonna be like, what? Are you kidding me, JJ? So this is an important calculation for you to understand so that you will make sure that you're aware of your FTEs. So what's a full-time equivalent employee, right? It's just based on 40 hours. And the SBA guidelines that came out on May 22nd that talk about forgiveness, it clearly stated that they considered 30 hours, but they're going with 40. They said they're going with 40 for full-time equivalent. So what does that mean? If you have a part-time individual and they work 20 hours, for the FTE calculation, it'll be a 0.5, okay, for that employee. They've got a couple of different, and that'll be a different video, but I'm just giving you a little background on, well, what's an FTE? An FTE would be a full-time equivalent employee. If you got 2 employees working full-time, then you got 2 FTEs, okay? If you have an employee that works full-time and an employee that works part-time, as in 20 hours a week, then you have a 1.5, okay? Again, there are a couple of methods. You're just gonna have to watch the video that I'm gonna talk about the different methods on the FTE, but that in essence right there is gonna work no matter what. So in this regard, what we're trying to figure out, this is why I feel like it's really key to make sure you know this, is whatever percentage we come up with literally reduces down the percentage of your loan forgiveness. So I wanna make sure you're hearing me on this one. So let's just say that you get $108,000, that's your PPP loan, okay? And you've done everything right and perfect. You paid your employees, no one went on PUA, no one left, you didn't miss a beat, you paid everybody the same the entire time as you paid them on February 15th. The expenses were all in there included. You didn't do any monkey business. It was just, here's what I got, here's what I spent, and you did it perfectly and flawlessly, but you only could come up with $100,000 in expenses, okay? Because we know that the $100,000, okay, the $100,000 you have to spend for it to be forgiven, okay? So in that circumstance, right, you go, I got 108, but I only spent 100, even though I did it perfectly. Well, only 100 has the possibility of being forgiven. The other 8, not gonna be forgiven, period, okay? Very clear in all the guidelines. Now, I just do that to make sure you know. Now I'm gonna add a wrinkle, okay? And the wrinkle that I'm gonna add is from an example that's literally in the SBA guidelines. So I'll put it in the body, but what am I talking about here? So I'd like you to have a reference of where I'm at so that you can either pause this and go to my website, jjthecpahelp.com. On the SBA page, there's no booby traps. You don't have to give me your email to get this, but you can click and find the loan the forgiveness application, and you'll also be able to find the SBA guidelines. So look on the forgiveness page, look on the SBA page. You'll find the guidelines, and it says forgiveness on the guidelines. There's all kinds of guidelines, but it's the one that says forgiveness. And what are we looking at? We're looking at the SBA guidelines. Okay, we're looking at the SBA guidelines on pages 15 and 16, and it's 5B as in boy, okay? We're looking at 5B, and it correlates to the PPP forgiveness application on page 6, and we're gonna be looking at lines 11 through 3, okay? Lines 11 through 3. And what lines 11, I just said 11 through 3, I'm sorry, 11 through 13, okay? Lines 11 through 13. And that section is the FTE reduction calculation, okay? Because there's other line 11s in this forgiveness app. You gotta make sure you're on the right part of the forgiveness app. So you need to be on page 6. We're looking at lines 11 through 13, which is the FTE reduction calculation. And this is all coming from the guidelines. okay? And from the application. Now, when you're looking at the application, okay, also on page 5, okay, page 5, it talks about these line items as well, okay? So when you're trying to figure these out, these little pauses kind of help make sure no one's like, oh my gosh, please. Now remember, this is trying to entertain you, right? This is dry calculations, but we have to know this because I'm going to show you how someone spent 100 grand and only 80,000 of it is going to be forgiven. You feel me? You feel me? Okay. This is, you got 108 grand. You spent 100. You did everything you could. You had a little blip in your FTEs, and only 80,000 of what you spent is going to be forgivable. So this is one that you're like, you know what? I need to really focus in. Watch this one again, probably. So I'm having fun with you, but I am wanting to make sure you stay with me on this one, okay? I'm doing my best to go through this because we're looking at guidelines and we're looking at the the PPP application for forgiveness. We got multiple pages to look at, so I'm tying it all together for you because this is the one that if you can make it whole by June 30, you don't have this problem. And everybody thinks it's simpler than it's just like, oh, we'll just bring people back, you know. Hey, it's my cousin, you know, come on back in. Yep, now we're good. It's not gonna work that way because, and it's gonna be in another video, there's some caveats there. So you need to be aware of what it is that I'm getting ready to calculate here. So stick with me, I appreciate it. I love you, by the way. Thanks for watching. Hey, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. All right, so line 11, okay? What is line 11? And we're talking about on page 6 of the application for forgiveness. Okay, you ready for this? Okay, so line 11, okay, is what's called the reference period, okay? You don't write in your reference period. I wish they had a little spot because it might help us all. But on line 11, you're putting in the average FTE during the reference period. I'm making sure I'm using the exact jargon. So we're trying to get the average FTE during the reference period. And the reference period, you ready for this? Okay, we got 2 dates we can pick from. Okay, so the first one, the reference period is, you can look at February 15th, 2019, folks, to June 30, 2019, which means you got to go back and find your payroll records for that period. Now, on my website, jjthecpahelp.com, I have a list of, it's called like Get a Head Start list for employers on what to pull through or what to pull now related to your records and payroll. Or, okay, the reference period can be January 1st, 2020 through February 29th, 2020. No one's going to care about this little trivia, but my birthday's on the 29th. I'm actually, how old am I? I don't know, 12 years old. This is your reference period. So in line 11, you get to pick. Now, of course, you're going to pick the better one. Am I right? How do you know the better one? Yeah, we'll get to it at the end. The better one is going to be the one that results in the one that's closest to a 1 or closest to 100, basically. So here's the thing, though. If you're seasonal, so there's a third date to pick from, okay? We're talking about the reference period on line 11 of the Forgiveness Act. So if you're seasonal, okay, right there, seasonal, you can take a 12-week period. This is now 19. You take a 12-week period, May 1st through September 30th, 19. You take a full straight 12 weeks and you can use that period, right? So this is obviously more than 12 weeks. So you pick your 12 weeks. That's for seasonal only, period, the end. And why is that? Because if you are in a situation where these periods of time don't result in really what your payroll is or should be, or penalizes you. They're giving you the opportunity to do seasonal. So what I'm telling you is when you're then going to line 11, you have to do potentially 3 calculations if you're seasonal, but every employer is going to have to do at least 2 calculations. Whoo! And you have to bear with me, okay? I'm not complaining at all. I'm just saying, like, to even get these calculations, I have to do a separate video on how you even come up with the average FTEs. So average FTE, I want you to know that yes, look at that. That is not a 3-month period, okay? That's half of February, March, April, May, and June. That's a 4.5-month period. This is a 2-month period, but the average FTEs are, well, during that period, you take all your employees, how many hours were worked, divide them by 40 to come up with your average FTE. So you have a longer period to come up with it and a shorter period to come up with it, okay? But you're doing either or, and obviously you're gonna pick the one that's higher, okay? No, wait a minute. Well, it depends. Why am I even saying it's higher? Could be different. Might wanna pick the one that's lower. You don't even have to pick it. You're gonna figure out both. End of story. You're gonna run the calculation 2 different ways, seasonal 3 different ways to determine what you wanna pick, okay? So, now, line 12 of the FTE reduction calculation, page 6. Line 12 is the average FTE during the covered period. And remember, for your payroll period, during the covered period, okay, you can pick the actual 56 days of payroll, or you can pick the alternative dates of payroll. And I have another video that talks about that. I'll put a link in the body of this where you can watch how do you pick which payroll. But my point is, you're picking whatever period you're using to determine your FTEs, your average full-time equivalent employees, okay? Then line 13 is, we're going to divide line 12 by line 11. So it says it right here, divide, I'm making sure I get it exactly right, 12 by 11, okay? So I'm getting ready to get to the end. This is an example from the SBA guidelines that I'm getting ready to give you. It's an example from them, okay? So what you're looking at here is on those SBA guidelines on pages 15 and 16, I'm looking at 5B as in boy. So that's where this example is gonna come from, okay? So you take this, right? You take those 2 periods and what you come up with is, I'm gonna make sure, what I don't wanna do is reshoot this entire video because I pulled the wrong number and I'm pretty sure it's a 10 and an 8, and it is. Okay, so the reference period has 10 full-time equivalents, okay? So you pick the better period, okay? And you do your average FTE. The covered period, this is in the example, is an 8. So for those of you that are like boom on math, you already know that this quotient here is going to be 80%, okay? So remember when I talked to you, the loan forgiveness, okay, is gonna be reduced by 20%. Okay? So let me be clear. This result here is not because of this. I'm giving you now a hypothetical, okay? I'm giving you a hypothetical because they don't, in the SBA guidelines, apply it to loan forgiveness. So this part of the example is for me, but I'm not changing these numbers. So let me be clear. This is, I told you at the beginning, someone got a PPP loan for $108,000. Okay? They did everything perfect other than They obviously had a hiccup, and maybe not even an intentional hiccup. But anyways, we got a hiccup here on the FTEs. So before this is applied, okay? Before, I'm going to cover it up with my body. I'm doing this on purpose, trying to entertain you too. Okay, so on this, the calculation is 100,000 is to be forgiven before before applying this quotient. Okay? 100,000 is forgiven. You're like, woo, bam, I'm in. I like it. I can handle it. I got 108. I spent 100. I got 8,000 left over. There you go. Until you come to this reduction. Because I'm not kidding around here. You're gonna be like, nah, the math wasn't right here. It is right. So this right here, okay, means that 20,000 is not forgivable of the 100, and only 80 would be forgivable. Okay? For real. So I'm gonna walk through it real quick here. You have a reference period, and the average FTE from the reference period is a 10. Okay? So you know what? Obviously you want that to be low. Anyways, you're gonna pick, in essence, the best number for you, which in this example obviously would be a lower number, or 8, right? Then you're going to look at your covered period, which is your payroll period, either the exact covered period or your alternative, and you're going to figure out the average FTEs. So 10 and 8 means we have an 80% figure, which means that 20%, okay? 20% of your loan's going to be lopped off, haircutted, as Brad, the CPA, would say. Or another way to look at it is only 80% of your loan will be forgiven. So let's be clear on this. You first have to figure out how much did I spend and how much is forgivable. Okay? This is why I went ahead and put a number in here. So if you'll note, it's not 80% times the loan. Okay? It's not that. The loan's the loan. This PPP forgiveness is what you already spent. Everything's good to go. Payroll costs, did 75%, less than 25% on non-payroll costs. Like, this is what you spent, 100 grand. You end up with this quotient here. 20,000 is not going to be forgiven. So only 80,000 will be forgiven. Only 80,000 is going to be forgiven on this. Okay? So here's my calculation. PP loan was this. And then if you're like, well, where'd you come up with 100? Out of thin air. Okay? Out of thin air. So 108,000, and somehow the rest of the application came to 100,000 being forgivable. All the other calculations, right? And I know you're probably like, well, wait a second, JJ. I mean, like, what about this pay? And then what about, you know what? There's no way that this determined the 100. Okay? You know why? Because this is only a calculation to reduce down your loan forgiveness. Because let's just be clear, here in its raw form, here's loan forgiveness, payroll and non-payroll costs. Spend it, that's your forgiveness. Right? But then of course they have, well, not more than 25%, it has to be only these kind of payroll, only this kind of non-payroll costs. But at the end of the day, right, if they really simplified it and they just said, hey, whatever you spend on payroll, forgiven. Whatever you spend on these non-payroll expenses, forgiven. Okay? So this quotient doesn't affect 100 grand until the very, very end. Okay? This is the victory lap going, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so thankful. I got 108 grand. I spent 100. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I didn't do anything to gig the system. But your FTEs don't come out right. You will have spent 100, but only 80 of it's going to be forgiven. So of the 20 of what you spent, 20,000 you'll need to pay back of what you spent. Right? So if you got $8,000 left over, okay, you can either pay it back right now or pay it out over the 18 months following the 6 months of defer, and you're going to owe that 20,000 back. So let's be clear: you spent that, you got to pay it back. So why is this important right now? Because you can figure out your FTEs right now. For line 11, you can figure it out right now because you're going to go to these periods and you're going to figure out what your average FTE is. You might be able to guess at this, okay? So you're going to know, and you don't even have to know, well, what's my dollar amount of loan forgiveness? What this is going to tell you is how much of my loan forgiveness will be forgiven. Isn't that crazy? How much of my loan that was initially eligible to be forgiven will actually be forgiven, right? This is going to tell you the percentage of what will be allowed, or you just do the inverse. Basically, it's going to be reduced by 20%. So you can know that now, okay? So if you're in a hot mess over this unintentionally, then you have to watch the other videos in terms of like, well, what can I do about it? I don't know. I'm just walking through the calculations here. I don't have a secret like, well, then do this or do this. Okay? So let's be clear, real quick, just to wrap up. Okay? I'm gonna take all this off. Okay? So now this will be, we had 10. But if we still had 10, right, then we've got a 1 or we've got 100%. Okay? I don't want to confuse anybody because that makes sense to me, it may not make sense to you. So we have 100%. Okay? That means that the reduction will be 0 of what is initially forgiven. Okay? So on and so forth. Right? So, well, what if that's an 11 and what if that's a 10? Well, you're going to divide it out. There's going to be some percentage that's not going to be forgivable of your initially forgivable amount. What if this is an 11, okay, and that's a 10? Well, then you're definitely going to be fine, right? Because it's going to be more than 1, okay? So, I'm tired, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm getting my calculator out. Because what happens is I will have shot this 23-minute video, and because I'm tired and if I accidentally did math incorrectly, then everybody's going to be like, oh man, you did it wrong, I think, JJ. So if this is a 10 and this is an 11, okay? And you don't have to be good at math to be a CPA. I'm excellent at math, but when I'm doing a video that's going to be out there for everybody to see, I'd rather make sure. So 11 divided by 10 is 110%. I'm having fun with you, but I am dead serious why I did the calculator. I knew it was 110%. Just want to make sure. See? So there's not going to be any reduction. So then if you're like, well, JJ, it sounds really simple. I need that to be higher than that. Well, guess what? You can't really control this because it already happened. Okay? This already happened. This probably already happened or is happening, right? So it kind of is what it is. Full-time equivalent, okay? Not head count. Full-time equivalent, right? So you can't just bring in extra bodies. Now, I know you're going to say, whoa, JJ, hang on here. What if we rehire everybody by June 30? Okay, absolutely. You hire everybody by June 30. That old example, and there was only 8 here. But this is what I want you to think about, though, and this is why it probably would be good to walk through this example. What if just plain and simple, you only got 8? You only got 8. You don't have 2 people missing. You don't have 2 people on PUA. You only have 8 people. Okay? So, well, how could that have happened, JJ? Lots of ways, right? Meaning, this period and then this period's later, there could have been differences of when people left. They quit, they got fired, something happened to them, they moved, whatever the case is. Meaning, you're only left with 8 people. And you're like, you know what? I don't need anybody else. It's just possible that it's like, wow, how anybody else to rehire? That's why you want to know the number, because then you're able to plan, because you got to spend it to get it forgiven. So this is, you spend it, yep, looks to be forgivable. However, you got a situation here like this, it's going to affect the forgiveness. All right. Hey, thanks for sticking with me. 25 minutes, thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully it makes sense. I'm trying to go through it carefully. I'm using a whiteboard because I feel like it's easier for you to follow, for me to follow. It can be a little more engaging, try to be, versus if I had it up on an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm sure there's other people that have an Excel spreadsheet, or they were able to get through all this, you know, maybe quicker, but it wasn't going to be probably with the same explanation, or it wasn't going to be as entertaining. Maybe, I don't know. Bottom line is that you're looking at these SBA guidelines, you're looking at this part of the application. This is walking you through just 3 line items. But notice this, line 2 and 5 on page 6 feed into line 12. You have a seasonal period that goes into this place. And all you're putting on the application is this and this. You're not even putting any of this information on page 6. You're on line 11, 12, and 13, it's just a 10, an 8, and then there would be the 80%. So there's so much behind the scenes. And it's coming from the app and its explanations on page 5, as well as the SBA guidelines laid out. So, all right, hey, thanks for tuning in. Maybe I already asked you, but if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it. And thank you for watching my video. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, hey, have a great one.